What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we're going to be going over a god roll from the Prophecy Dungeon with the Adjudicator SMG in our Kinetic slot. This is a nice 600 RPM Kinetic SMG up here, so like the submission, everything like that in that Kinetic slot. Absolutely rails in both Crucible as well as PvE, with some interesting perks on it for an SMG. So we will get right into this bad boy, as well as telling you about its origin trait and where to farm this. So if you would like to farm this Adjudicator right here, make sure to head into the Prophecy Dungeon and go to that second encounter and farm the cube room, where you gotta deposit those motes into one of the 4 different areas, which will allow that cube room to rotate. Where you do it about 6 times, you get to the boss of this cube room, defeat the 2 big old Centurion Cabal, and you get your chest to drop. Sudden death as well as Adjudicator can drop out of this chest, so make sure this is where you are farming this bad boy. Now, when we're talking about origin traits, first off, we're gonna have this crossing over. This weapon increases range handling for the top half of the magazine, while the bottom half of the magazine does more damage. So Crucible wise, this thing absolutely is insane in my opinion, this crossing over trait, but also does have its place inside of the PvE realm, especially with that little bit of extra damage in the bottom half of the magazine. So overall, great origin trait that they put on these prophecy weapons. Now, when we move on to weapon mods for this for the PvE realm, I would go with minor or major spec right here. Minor spec does that 8% damage to those red bar combatants, which major spec does that for champions as well as those orange bars. So totally up to you, but for PvE, definitely throwing on one of those. Now, for me personally, I think your 2 masterwork choices are range and stability. For me, I personally went with stability, have it at 63 on range, 62 on stability for both basically the Crucible as well as PvE. So I felt like this stability, having it up in those low 60s, made this thing feel like a laser beam in both PvE as well as Crucible. But for PvE, helps you hit those targets at just a little bit farther range more consistently, because we're not using this for those long range defeats in GMs like that. We're using it up close and personal on those certain enemies, especially since we have a very fun kinetic tremors trait in the 4th column. Alright, so starting us off in the first column for our barrels, we got 2 different options. The first one is this small bore right here, giving us that +7 in stability as well as range. So like I said, helps to control and hit the enemies at a little bit farther range. Just feels just right, like Goldilocks inside of PvE. Now, as our second choice, we got polygonal rifling right here, which gives us that +10 to stability. So it's giving us at 65 total for that. A little bit less range obviously than that small bore has, but if you're having trouble controlling the bounce on the 600 RPM, throw on polygonal. So when we move on to the second column, we're going to have 2 options in here as well. First off, I would go with tactical mag, my personal favorite in this slot. We get an increase to magazine size, reload, and stability. So it kind of tackles every little thing that is quote unquote wrong or needed on this weapon. That magazine size goes up to 43. We get +10 in reload and +5 in that stability. So it really helps us to juice out those 2 stats, which we are using pretty often inside of the PvE realm. Next off, we got appended mag, which gives us a few more bullets, giving us up to 46 inside of the magazine, but we don't get that nice little bit of reload and stability on the appended mag. So that's why I would go with tactical over this any sort of day of the week. Third column, we got 3 different options. First off is subsistence right here. Defeating targets partially reloads the magazine from reserves, so it is a staple trait inside of the PvE realm, especially on something like an SMG or an auto rifle. Really keeps this thing firing consistently, keeps up the ad clear potential of a 600 RPM SMG like this. Plus, when we pair it with one of the couple different options we have in the 4th column, it feels very good. The other option second we have here is Feeding Frenzy. So each rapid kill with this weapon progressively increases that reload speed. So you can see stacking up to ×5 gives us that nice increase to reload speed all the way up to 100. So it is a super fast reload when we are using this at ×5. I think I personally would choose this over Subsistence. This would be my #1 choice because of the traits that we will be using, but this is a just staple as well inside of PvE. Now my last choice, which is also a very viable and good choice, is increase reload speed, stability, and handling when enemies are in close proximity with Threat Detector here. So you can see when they're within 15 meters of one enemy, we get 15 stability, 15 on reload, and about 0.57 on that handling. Then when we are in proximity to 2 enemies, we get 40 stability, 55 reload, and then about 0.6 on that handling. So it is a very good amount of stability and reload we get when we're in that area with 2 enemies near us. So kind of tackles, again, like I said, those things that need help with this weapon in that stability as well as reload. And finally, when we move on to the 4th column, we got a few different options again. First off is what I would go with here is Kinetic Tremor. Sustained kinetic damage to a target emits a shockwave that damages nearby targets. This got a nice juicy buff this season, so it procs earlier in these shots, so it is happening more often in a magazine that has a lot of bullets, so it has a pretty good damaging output as well. So it helps with damaging some of those champions as well as those stronger enemies, so it'll help a lot in that end game activities that you're going into, where you're not just blowing through lost sectors, normal strikes in like 5 minutes. Kinetic Tremors will really help with some of those bigger, stronger targets that just eat SMG bullets. Usually Kinetic Tremors allows you to mow through them. The second option that I have is Onslaught right here. Final blows with this weapon increase its rate of fire. So something like Onslaught mixed with Subsistence, Feeding Frenzy is absolutely disgusting. Onslaught goes so fast, and you're able to shoot a lot of bullets down lane, so you're able to ad clear a lot faster, as well as if you do some ad clear first, pair that inside of damaging a boss or a major. Once Onslaught is procced, it just rails with this perk. So the last option that I have is Rampage for PvE kills with this weapon. Stack its damage. 1 kill is 10% damage, 2 kills 21%, 3 kills we get that 30% increase to that damage. So it pairs again very well with really any of the perks in the 3rd column, Feeding Frenzy, Subsistence, or Threat Detector. So we have a lot of different options and roles for this Adjudicator for the PvE realm. Now, when we move on to the PvP side of things, this thing does do some pretty good work inside of the Crucible as well, with some very good perks in that 3rd and 4th column for us, giving us around 75 in the range and 60 in stability. So this thing maps Guardians. First off, for the mod I would throw on this bad boy, Quick Access Sling. Totally up to you, really, whatever you're using, but I do like having this to pull out the weapons ready and stow speed a little bit faster, so it basically gives us additional handling on this SMG. As for our masterwork, going with stability for sure inside of the Crucible. Lets you laser people, feels like it helps a lot with the bounce and flinch when you are getting hit, so stability, masterwork, easily what I'm going with. We have 2 barrel options. Small bore, again, just because of that stability and range, feels like what I personally would go with for this, but if you do like having a little bit of extra handling, we have an option in the barrels as well. That fluted barrel right here gives us stability as well as handling on this, so it does give us a little bit less to our range, but we're still at 66 in range, 55 in that stability, and all the way up to 36 in handling. So you can swap on and off of this weapon a lot faster with this barrel, but I like the extra range and and stability that small bore has. Moving on to our magazine, for me, only one option really has the perks that you want, which is accurized rounds right here. Gives us that plus 10 to range, so we can just map guardians like I said with this thing, especially when we have that small bore on and getting about 60 in that stability as well. This thing just absolutely maps, and we're counteracting the handling being a little bit lower with that quick access sling, so accurized definitely the magazine to go with. In the third column, we have 3 different options. Again, first off, dynamic sway reduction, improve accuracy and stability while continuously holding down the trigger. So you can see we get that accuracy and stability up to 100% in the accuracy cone and that 10 in stability when we are continuously firing this weapon. So it just helps you turn this thing into a laser beam, no bounce at all, so it is a very good perk for PvP. Second option is perpetual motion. This gains bonus stability, handling reload while we are in motion, so you can see stacks up to ×1, ×2 for that ×1, 5 stability, handling reload, ×2 in the stacks, we get 15 to stability, handling, and reload. So me personally, I would go with perpetual motion over dynamic sway and our third one, but that is just my personal opinion because I like the stability and handling that we get from perpetual on this. Helps us to switch on and off this from our sniper, whatever you are using. Last but not least, we got rangefinder right here. Just might help you shoot a little bit farther in that effective damage range. With aiming, this weapon increases its effective range and zoom magnification. We don't have any increase in projectile speed, so it just gives us 10% increase to zoom, 30% to aim assist for that fall off within the aim assist distance. So it is a nice little bit of extra range that you can get if you feel like you're just getting absolutely mapped, but I feel like you don't need this perk, just an option to have. Perpetual is definitely my #1 option. Now in the last slot, got 2 options. First one is onslaught. I absolutely love this perk inside of the Crucible on my SMGs as well as my auto rifles. When we get a final defeat, the rate of fire increases, so once you get that first defeat and you get onslaught to proc, you just absolutely mow down that second, third guardian that you are going into. So I personally love this one the most on auto rifles, but it does feel really good on this SMG as well, especially in 6s, something like that where there is a lot of people coming at you. Definitely also works in trials and 3s, especially if you're getting a 3-piece. That first guardian goes down a little bit slower, but then the second 2 with onslaught get absolutely schmelted. And last but certainly not least, I know target lock did get a little bit of a nerf, but it is still one of the better perks for PvP inside of these SMGs here. Damage increases the longer the weapon remains on the target, so as long as you're not missing your shots, this is still one of the S tier perks in my personal opinion for the Crucible on those auto rifles. Anything like that has a consistent stream of flow with target lock and a little magazine. Nothing like trace rifles because their magazine is a little bit too large to get some of these to proc consistently in my personal opinion, but I do really like the target lock aspect, having it on there and just melting guardians. So this does have a lot of different options, like I said, for both PvE, PvP. I would give this a good about 4.0 inside of the PvE realm for just going in doing basically anything. In the Crucible would give it a little bit higher, maybe a 4.3, 4.4 because of that onslaught target lock with perpetual motion. Just have very good options for this SMG. Really all of the weapons that came out with Prophecy on that re-release of the loot pool, absolutely slapping. So thank you guys again for that support lately. Hopefully y'all have been into the dungeon grinding it out. I appreciate all you guys. If you feel just right, please hit that subscribe and a like button, helps out the channel a lot. Also give that bell a little schmack so you don't miss out on any of the videos that we put out here for god rolls, builds for this, as well as anything we're putting out on Pal World, because I do like that game as well, and we've been dropping videos. So I appreciate again all your support. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.